Welcome back to another episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast, the number one podcast in the world for growing your insurance business. I'm Glenn Shelton. Christian Brindle is on paternity leave right now, and I have a special guest helping me co-host today's episode, Mr. Chris Bell. If you don't know who Chris is, you've probably been living under a rock. He is what I have dubbed the industry historian, especially when it comes to Medicare events. Chris can essentially recall anything that's happened in the industry for the past decade, especially from the event side of the industry, which is incredible. We were going through it at the summit this year, and he was pulling out his phone, showing pictures of things that happened 6, 7, 8 years ago, and it was awesome to be able to kind of reminisce. So Chris, I really appreciate you jumping on today. How are things going, my friend?
Going great. Thank you for having me.
Good.
Yeah. We were pulling out some old photos of Christian, some of his first speaking engagements.
Yes.
Showing the level of progression that's taken place on that. It was a lot of fun. But
yes.
Of all the Medicare conferences, the seven-figure, started, all the conferences start out at one name and progress to a different. So, we're at the seven-figure Medicare Agent Summit now. But it looks like it's in Salt Lake again next year. We're trying to get more and more people to go to it. So it's always a good time.
Without having to pay Chris, he already promoted the summit. So Chris,
I've got agents I'm trying to get to go next year. I'm like, you need like agents that work with me independent, or I've got a couple LOAs that I'm like, it is, the best use of, it's one of the best use of money you can do. I always say any conference you go to, you're going to get about half of what you would learn on the stage and the other half talking to agents. The stuff that agents has been invaluable.
Let's get into this topic specifically because, as you know, there's new agents coming into the industry all the time. We have a lot of new agents that I think end up listening to this podcast or they watch this show. And if, there's events that get marketed to all the time, arguably some are better than others. As someone as seasoned as you are at going to events, if there was a new agent attending an event, what would your advice be for them to really maximize what they're getting out of an event in the industry? What would your advice be?
That'd be, one, go to the event. Don't talk to people. If you know anyone that's online, like if you've seen someone talk in Facebook groups, like I've walked up to people that I've followed for years and told them, I'm like, hey, I followed you online for years, I'd love to meet you. And then they'll talk. I've had people walk up to me and they were like, hey, Chris, it's like, I've seen you on Facebook or I've talked to you. So it's gone both ways. And I've even thrown up if we've never met in person, if you find me, I'll buy you a beer at conferences before. And
that's a good one. First round's on me, right? That's a good one. And
have actually met one of my Zach Wiskina from Pennsylvania. I got to meet him that way. Mm-hmm. We're still friends. It's don't go to your hotel room after, as soon as the event's over. Stay out, talk to people, go to dinner with people. You will learn more from agents, and they will tell you whatever question you want to ask. They will tell you. It's like nobody is holding secrets whenever you're in an informal setting like a Medicare conference. And that's one of the greatest things. It's like when I spoke this year at the Seven Figure, I was talking about the stuff that I learned from talking to an agent at the seminar, at the conference the year prior. So literally I sat down with Lisa Asmussen for a couple hours the night before she was actually going to talk on stage, and I had no idea. And we're talking about how I need help, and I've been on the fence about hiring a VA. And she's like, Chris, I have 4 of them, right? And I was like, no. So she literally gave me the playbook. She goes, this is how I structure my agency. This is what I do. This is how I work it. And I took all those notes and all that info. And then literally right after the conference, I hired a VA and we did those things. And her help, like the info that she gave me, helped speed up the training, helped make that integration go quick. But, it really, really helped me during the last AEP. It's like, I think one of the rough numbers was, it was like 40%. I beat my top enrollments by 40% last year. There was a lot of turmoil, but at the same time, just being able to schedule all the pre-planning, getting people on the calendar, like all that stuff. But had I not talked, I probably wouldn't have made that step, and would have lost a lot of business last year too, because I couldn't have gotten to it. So, but I mean, at the conferences, and there's topics that you're not planning to be exposed to. There's things that you'll learn that you weren't actually seeking out, but then someone talks about it on stage and you're like, oh, wow, I never thought about it this way or haven't done it that way. And I'm constantly doing that at any of these conferences. I just got a big tip I was like talking to agents. It's like, how are you handling these drug plans next year? What's your strategy? It's like, how are you going to manage your time on, getting people drug plans that you don't get paid for,
Yeah. So, I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like networking with agents, it's always been one of my number one things going to any event. And it seems like even if I've gone to a bad event and I've gone to a couple, I'm sure you have too, and we're not here to name those events, but even when I'm at an event that's not great, being able to talk to agents like that. And the interesting part too is like, in this online world that we live in, agents can be really guarded with information, like what you're just talking about right there. But for whatever reason, when you get in person and you're hanging out, it just seems like you can really have people open up and they'll share things that maybe they wouldn't share online with you. They wouldn't share in your DMs. They wouldn't send you an email or maybe not even tell you over the 100%. Phone. So yeah,
it is one of those things, people will give you, 30%, maybe 50% online, like, in a Facebook group or in a message. But whenever you're face to face, I mean, people are like, well, here's the company I use. Here's the, I mean, it's like, it's one step short of just sending you the playbook. I mean, it's been great. And it is one of those things, even at a bad conference, you can make up for it by just networking. And it's just seeing people who've been in the industry for years.
Yeah. So give us the goods. You're teasing us here with the zero commission PDPs, right? Everyone's dealing with it. So what's the word on the street that you're hearing on what people are going to be doing this AEP?
I mean, I don't know how other agencies are handling it, but one of the tips I got from a mastermind that I went to earlier this year was, I was talking like, well, how do we manage our time? Clients are wanting to set, appointments, and, a client wants to set an hour-long appointment. You want to set, a 20 or 30-minute appointment. I was like, man, even that, like trying to fill up your calendar with a bunch of stuff that you don't get paid on. And they were like, well, here's what we do. And I was like, okay. And they essentially just said, they're like, we get all their info ahead of time. And I use Retire Flow. Dalton was just on the show this week, right? Was it a few days ago? So I use Retire Flow. We collect all their doctors, all their medicines, all that data gets entered into our system, into our CRM, into Connecture by my VA. So she's doing all that data entry. And then whenever people call in for those appointments, what we're going to be doing this year is just collecting names, getting their name and saying, someone's going to call you back, and we're going to be putting them all on a list. And then I've got 2 LOA agents that will be helping me, and they're just going to work the list. In between appointments for switching SUPs or Medicare Advantage plans, they'll be calling those PDP people back and just working the list. If they're not available, they just go to the next name. So they'll be knocking it out, and they'll just be calling saying, hey, you can keep the plan you have. This is your cost. Here's the one we recommend. And it is one of those things. If it is a plan, that we're not contracted with, because, a certain company canceled everyone's contract. We'll, probably just be sending the Pearl out for that and just having them do a self-referral. Because there is some legalities of, if you're not contracted, if you're covered by you or not. So we'll probably focus more on sending the, a Pearl out or a link that they can sign themselves up for that. But on the ones that we are contracted, United's not paying commissions on PDPs, but we're still contracted for those. So, we can help assist in that. But just let them know, it's like support's going to be limited. And that's in the letter that we're about to send out, letting clients know what to expect for AEP is just, hey, it's like there's been changes, we're, a lot of these companies are no longer, giving us, compensating us for helping with the enrollments. We still want to take care of you, but, time is going to be limited, essentially working for free. So
I think agents a lot of times will overcomplicate these things, right, in their mind, where all of a sudden they are doing silly things like, I'm going to spend an hour with someone on a $0 commission, right? Something I'm
Yeah.
not even going to get paid for, because they feel like they really have to do this to help them. Whereas a simple solution like, hey, here's your link, here's that pearl, right?
Yeah.
You can sign up. This is how you can sign up yourself. I think that is such a simple way of how you can buy your time back, get your time back, and focus on, you're still helping your beneficiaries, but you're also freeing up your time or your agent's time. So what else do you have going on for this coming AEP that you've been
Uh,
working on?
so I'm in Kansas City. Most people know, I always talk about the Chiefs. I've always got my Chiefs
Yeah.
going, but so most people know I'm in Kansas City, and Missouri is one of those states that's gotten hit real hard with, 20, 30, 40% rate increases. So we will be collecting MedSup data, just confirming, what we have saved in the system, what they have. Anyone who's healthy that we can flip during AP, open enrollment AEP. We'll be trying to get them, better pricing on subs and stuff too. But, the emphasis is going to be on these Medicare Advantage plans, making all their switches. We can do med subs any time of the year.
Yeah.
Just getting an updated price, making sure we've got everybody saved in the system correctly, and then following up when we have time. But it's doing. We've got a couple sales seminars set up at the local community center.
Okay, nice.
And it's one of those things. It's like invite your clients, but tell them to bring a friend. So
Yes.
it's like it's like I want you to come, but I really want you to bring a friend. It's like bring a friend,
Yeah.
show them what we can do, introduce your friends to our agency. And it's a great way, super low cost way to get new leads, to get new clients. And during AEP, everyone's blowing up on marketing. They're getting, 5 times the amount of stuff they normally would. So it's kind of like a friend bringing somebody is the easiest way to get new people instead of, compared to just trying to market to strangers. So, I don't know if it's my computer, but you froze for just a second. All right. Well, I don't know if you're still on or not, Glenn, but it's frozen on my screen, or maybe I'm the one frozen and just don't know. But let me see what's showing up here. Glenn, where are you? But all right. Well, until Glenn pops back up, I don't know if I'm still live on this or not, but we can talk about some AEP planning, I guess. So some of the stuff that you can do for AEP planning is, send out some emails to all your clients, set expectations, let them know that med subs aren't going to change. Let them, getting that data for your drugs.
All right. Well, until Glenn pops.
Getting that data for your drugs. Getting the data for your drugs, your pharmacies, figuring out, getting everything pre-planned. Glenn, where are you, buddy?
Hey, sorry. My internet cut out on me there for about a minute or so. I appreciate you.
I was like, I don't know if I'm frozen or you're frozen, but like I pulled it up and I was like, well, it looks like I'm still on. So let's see. We'll talk about getting stuff ready.
Appreciate you keeping the show rolling there while my internet glitched out. So I wanted to share, you were talking about having a client bring a friend, right? And kind of using that network to grow your book. And I think it's a great idea. So something we're planning on doing at ESI this year. So we typically do in the Utah, the Sandy area, again, kind of the local community where we have a lot of our clients. There's several Salt Lake area seminars that will do senior events. And so we're planning on having kind of a selfie booth where seniors can take pictures and post. And again, the idea is, getting them to share, hey, look, this is my agency, right? Kind of that natural networking. So I love that. I think, there's so many referrals that you can get from your book.
Have I ever showed you the cheap way to do a photo booth for agents? So, so here's we got a tip going out for agents who want to do events. If you own an iPad, there's a program called Luma Booth that you can put on your iPad and turn it into a photo booth. And it's having good lighting is a help. So the brighter you are, if you can throw a ring light behind it. But it's a program called Luma Booth that does the overlays. It'll take the photo, does the timing, can do virtual backgrounds. And then
genius.
And then at the end of it, it's just like a photo booth. You can it'll text out the photos that people take. You don't need to pay for a printer or for photo prints if you don't want to. If you want to go that route, it does have a plugin for that. But I just do the digital.
Nice.
But I've been invited to senior centers because I do it for free for senior centers. Some of the value-based clinics when they're doing events and stuff. We've done it for that. And I am not the best graphics design person. So I've made some of my own. I've had people help me. I've bought in some of the templates on Etsy, but it's essentially it's very like, if I can do it, you can do it. I guarantee you that. So, but it's a very quick, easy way to kind of set up a semi-professional photo booth. And, it's like now you're providing a service, and then you can tag that photo with your logo. So when you send them out, everybody who's got it on their phone, it's going to have your logo on it whenever they look at it or do anything with it. But
that
program,
genius. I don't know from a setup standpoint how we're planning on doing it, but that is a genius tip, you guys, for something. So you mentioned iPad. You think you could even download it on an iPhone? Just have an iPhone on a stand, you think, or does it have to be an iPad?
I don't know if the program will. So the screen's going to be smaller. So like the instructions and stuff will be smaller on an iPhone because it's got the welcome screen just like a regular.
Right.
I mean, I saw someone do it once, and I was like, "We paid how much for this?" Like, like they're using an iPad and a ring light. I was like, I own an iPad and I can buy a bigger ring light. I was like, we can make this work. And mine was a little funky at first, but I bought nicer stands, nicer stuff over time. So it looks pretty. It looks good. Turns out good now. And if you are doing a virtual background on it, instead of just having it open in the back, having that ring light for good lighting will make the big difference for getting that separation between what's behind you and then the virtual background, putting it in behind you.
Well, now we know how all of these photo booth companies are making their money. Seriously,
some are using DSLR cameras. They're using nice cameras.
That's true.
Stuff.
That's true.
If you see one and it's super thin, they're just using an iPad on it. I mean, it's And I couldn't believe. I was like, really? I was like, that's it, huh? And I can't remember what I pay for Luma Booth. You can do monthly or annual, but I think it's like $150 a year or something. It's pretty cheap. But it's like being able to text everything out, and everything's self-contained, so it works great.
Nice.
Yeah, and you can send a link to the event organizer too. So like after the events are over, I'll send them the link, and they can download all the pictures that people sent themselves. And some of the events that I've done, they've asked, and I've sent that out to them. They're like, "Oh wow, thanks. This is really cool," because they can see like the people who attended and everybody smiling at a good time. So.
Yeah, I think the ability, there's so many ways, so many solutions that helps, it gives you social validity, being able to post that online. People know you're a real agency, you have real clients, you can get those referrals from your clients' network if they're sharing it. So I love that. I think that was a great tip. One thing that I shared on the show yesterday, we were going through how the final rule that came out in 2024 for 2025 got essentially vacated entirely, minus the one-to-one consent for Medicare Advantage, the information sharing between TPMOs. You just have to make sure that wherever that's coming from, it's essentially been personalized for you. I don't know if you had a chance to see that, but I'd be curious to know kind of your thoughts on that. And then really the broader question I wanted to ask you today, Chris, is like, what are your thoughts on kind of the future of the industry right now based on where we're at right now? I mean, this is Christian and I are always doing this on this show, is like looking into the crystal ball. What do we think's coming? And obviously, as someone who's been in the industry as long as you, I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts and where you think things are going from here.
So, I mean, I've been talked off the ledge by Christian, by Justin Rock, Josh Lustig. It's like everyone, even Mike, I got a great friend, Kevin Rohde. I think you know Rohde.
Yeah, but, absolutely.
But it's like you've got guys who've been in the business short periods of time, who've done insanely well. People have been in the business a long period of time. Stuff changes. When I talk to these guys and they're like, Chris, I had a carrier leave. I lost 500 clients. I had to get swapped in one AEP. Up in that Minnesota area, UCare is leaving. And one of our friends he has like 1,700 clients he has to flip to a new plan. That's insane. I mean, there's always going to be a ton of change. But one of the biggest tips I got last year was, if you're a one-man show and you're not expanding, you're not making it to where you have capacity for when these large changes happens, like eventually you are going to get replaced. You're going to be the agency that doesn't make it. I put a lot of emphasis this last year on trying to get some LOA agents to be able to help me out. And so whenever these changes happens, that we can capitalize on it. So if there's industry change, industry shakeup, like you need to be positioning yourself to be able to capitalize on it, and you can just continue to go through it. So I mean, I have been concerned. I'm like, sky's falling, looking at, canceling commissions,
little.
And last year I was in, like I said, I'm in Kansas City. We were national news for Blue Cross at KC leaving the market. They canceled 32,000 people last year.
Crazy.
But one of the other things too is, as long as our industry exists, if you're willing to adapt, you'll be okay. One of the big things, and a lot of guys who know me, it's like I always have this bracelet on that says "See the people." But it was by a guy named Lyle Carpenter who used to say that all the time. See if I can get it to pop up in there. But Lyle Carpenter worked for my old company for 67 years. He started when all they sold was dollars per day in the hospital. And he transitioned. He transitioned from not even major medical didn't even exist when he started. So he went from dollars per day in the hospital, literally going door to door, town to town, to where we are today in the industry. So he saw Medicare's development, major medical starting, ancillary plans, the marketplace, advantage plans, drug plans. I mean, literally he was through every single
like seeing the earth being created. It's like dinosaurs. You're like going through the whole evolution. This is crazy.
And I was just like, I was always amazed, was like, how many times did his entire book of business get canceled? Because that product just no longer exists. And just every time he just transitioned. So he transitioned every time there was a major shakeup. And he was one of the top agents in the company. In fact, he retired and was still like in the top 3, just trying to service his business. But it's one of those things. If you're just willing to adapt, you're willing to pay attention and make changes, but also set yourself up to have capacity. If you're just barely getting by, like I was for several years, just barely getting everyone's enrollments processed, barely getting to all your appointments before before midnight on the 7th, you're not going to be able to grow. And being able to bring on agents to help you is the thing that's really going to be able to make you capitalize, because there are going to be changes. And, if this trend continues, there's going to be more and more shakeups every year. So just being able to capitalize on that. And as people who refuse to adapt, people who don't want to use technology, it's going to be harder and harder for them to maintain and cycle through that business. So,
when you're newer, it's hard to think of in that way, right? Like, obviously, again, both you and I have been around long enough that I think we really do see it in a different way. A lot of these agents that I'll talk to, if they only have 100 or a couple hundred clients, they're thinking worst case scenario, if they have to rewrite a big chunk of them, that's okay. They can do it themselves. But all of a sudden it starts to compound over time. you add 100, you add another 200, you add 300. All of a sudden, you're getting close to 1,000 or more clients. What are you going to do? Like, how
Yeah.
can you even possibly do it all yourself?
I know
And
I
yet,
saw my buddy
so
who's
many
got
still do
1,700
it.
clients, and he's telling me that, and I
Crazy.
was like, "And you're not drinking at 8 a.m.?" And he was,
A little
and he was
whiskey in
like,
the coffee.
I know, and he was like, "Don't remind me." But he goes, "You know what? I've done somebody else. There's I think he told me it's like cost plans left his area, and he had 1,200 clients a few years prior that he had to rewrite. And he goes, "We know what we set up meetings, we did group enrollments, and we knocked it out." And he goes, "We're just going to do the same exact thing this year." But I was like, man, to be
Wow.
able to have that pressure of that large of a chunk. I mean, 1,700 clients, that's more than most agencies,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things. I mean, for single person, small 1-2 person agencies, even like it's, but being able to just know that that change is going to happen and like, we'll just take care of it. I was like, just that level of confidence and experience and knowing that you can get through it and it's not the end of the world. But also too, it's like now he's touched base, he's rewritten all those clients, and hopefully they'll be good for a year or two. So, it's kind of, it's like almost you're reestablishing your book when you do stuff like that.
There could definitely be benefits for sure. I could see where, if you hadn't had an interaction with them for a couple years because they had been on the same plan, you know, getting and then doing like a group event where maybe they do bring other people, new people. But I mean, just some rough math here, that's about 50 people per day, per working day of AAP that you're having to rewrite. So that is an insane volume that you're having to do. And the thing that Christian and I always talk about is, if you're so focused on that, on the retention piece, it is like impossible to grow during AEP.
100%. And
That's the
that's one of the
loss.
things I learned last year. I mean,
Yeah.
'cause I was stressing out with Aetna SmartFit leaving, with Blue Cross and KC canceling everything. We had carriers that lost hospital networks, carriers pulling out of different counties. I mean, it's, last year was, a bit of, just trying to get everybody rewritten. And I got through most of them. I lost people, but it just showed me the need to have that increased capacity. It's like, well, you
Yeah.
have that, like, if you try to be a one-man show forever, eventually you're gonna cap out. And there's people that, can be a one-man show and have 5,000 clients, but that's not me. Like, I can't do that.
Oh
It's like,
gosh.
people can, and they're amazing machines. But I'm not that talented. So I need help. But too, it's like if you can bring on one agent, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, if you're doing 300-400 enrollments, they're doing, they may not be as good as you. So say they're only doing 250. Well, now you just brought on
Yeah.
250 people that you wouldn't have done prior. It's like, it's almost at a point with some of these shakeups, like you can't afford not to hire an agent to work for you. And that's something too that
100%.
I talked to a guy named Mike and Sandra Gephardt last year, and they were helping me with stuff. And he was like, Chris, he goes, explain to me how you can afford not to hire somebody. And
Yes.
because I was like, man, it's like the cost, the money, the trying to get it. And he was like, explain to me how you can afford not to do this. And he was like, even after you pay them everything, he goes, how much are you going to walk away with if you were, and we were doing this rough numbers. And I was like, yeah, it just, sometimes you need someone to tell you to stop being stupid and put some faith and trust back into the system.
This episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by the Seven Figure University. SevenFigureUniversity.com is a culmination of Christian Brindle's and mine's educational videos that we have developed over the past 2 decades of combined experience in the senior insurance space. There's more than 250 videos, hundreds of hours of content that can help you become a top producer or a top producing agency in the senior insurance space. We're talking about videos of how to work with specific carriers, how to do different types of marketing, such as seminars or Facebook advertising, how to generate content in the niche to help grow your business, how to grow an agency all sorts of things. There's so much value in this. It's unbelievable. Christian, what do agents need to know about Seven Figure University?
Seven Figure University can best be thought of as an agency blueprint in a box that's put together for you that brings you step by step in every facet of building a successful seven-figure insurance agency and lays it out all in front of you so you can follow along. Whether you guys need help with marketing, whether you guys need help with branding, whether you guys need help with hiring, training, standard operating procedures, systems and processes, automation, you name it, it's covered in this course. Not only that, you get access to my weekly training calls every Thursday that go from January through the end of September on a week-to-week basis. And you can attend those live and ask questions live. And then, of course, the recordings are put into the university afterward if you can't attend it and make the live training. So there's just so much value. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and it's a great investment into your business to kind of keep you up to date on what's going on, but also kind of point you in the right direction in various things that you're struggling with.
Some of the best training you'll be able to find, you guys, in one spot for one price. Go to sevenfigureuniversity.com and learn more.
Let's get back to the show.
There's that piece of, there's also the piece of like your own sanity, right? Like you're saying, you made that joke about drinking at 8 a.m. But like, honestly, I mean, I've talked to some of these agents that have 1,000+ clients and they're doing it all by themselves. And it's like, how do you have time for anything, including any type of personal life? Like if your phone's ringing off the hook, you are a full-time customer service rep beyond anything else you're trying to do to either grow or maintain your business. Plus, try to have anything outside of working. Like it gets to a point where you cap and you're just grinding out your own gears, just burn out every time, in my opinion. And I've seen it. There are exceptions to the rule. There are some people I've seen who get to 2,000-3,000 clients and they're doing it all themselves, and it seems to somehow be manageable. I also feel like too, back in the day with MedSup, there was less customer service work, and it seemed like that was easier to maintain a bigger book by yourself. But these bigger MA books, it seems like there's a lot more client service work. Do you feel like that's true?
I do. And yeah, I feel like the plans aren't stable for as long. It's like you could write, in a lot of places you could write an MAPD and it would be good for, 3-4 years before there was really any major change. But now it is, it's kind of like if you get an MA that stays stable for 3 years, you're doing great. Where there's not some kind of major change. But with, drug deductibles being added, some of these plans are adding medical deductibles. There is just a lot more background work, and to medicines, it's like the name brands, with the Inflation Reduction Act that happened and how these companies, it's like some people, it's like, well, if we keep you on this plan, your drugs are going to hit the max at 2,000. We put you on this other plan because of their crediting models. Like you're going to spend $1,000 on medicines, so it's kind of like, if we make this change, you save $1,000, your copays stay roughly the same. And, and so it's like, you just showed your client how you saved them $1,000, and that being able to do stuff like that will buy you loyalty. It will buy you, good faith. And then too, if you can save somebody big money like that, they tell their friends, well, my agent, got me a new plan and saved me $1,000. Like, that they're going to be looking like, well, my agent didn't save me, or I didn't even hear from my agent, so you might be able to pick up some new clients by just, providing that amazing customer service, or, taking care of your books and going out of your way. So
we'll get in a second here. I want to get deeper into the delegation piece of this. We had Chris on stage with us at the Seven Figure Summit this year, if you weren't there, and we kind of tore through virtual assistants and what Chris has been doing to be successful working with our virtual assistants from Hire Heroes. And I want to get deeper into that. But before we do, I want to talk about today's sponsor of episode 142 of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast, and it is none other than Lead Heroes, the #1 insurance lead provider in the senior insurance space. Last week was Christian's birthday, and in honor of his 33rd birthday, which is hard to believe that he's only 33, because him and I both look like we're in our late 70s with our balding hairlines. In honor of his 33rd birthday, we are offering a 33% discount on our fixed cost turning 65 Medicare supplement and final expense leads until the 26th. So you have 5 more days where you can save. If you order 100 or more of either of those lead types, you can save up to $1,700 or more. The savings is not capped based on how many you order. So you can order as many as you want at this discounted price until the 26th. So head over to leadheroes.com right now. Do not wait. And make sure to, if you didn't, wish Christian Brindle a belated happy birthday. I know he is on paternity leave right now, so I hope he's doing well with his family. I do get a little bit of messages here and there from him, but take advantage of that discount. Head over to leadheroes.com, leadheroes.com. Okay, that out of the way. Chris.
All right.
Let's jump into it. If, again, the biggest thing, I mean, we did this big Hire Heroes webinar a couple weeks ago. We had hundreds of agents on there, and I got tons of questions. I got a bunch of follow-up questions from people after the webinar. And I feel like a lot of agents struggle with, where do I even start? Like, how do I even do this? So if again, new agent to passing some of this stuff off, and you've already kind of hit on a few different things, like, you know, how you were able to have a lot of success last AAP. If someone were to come to you right now and say, hey, Chris, you know, I'm looking at hiring a virtual assistant, but I'm not really sure what the first thing to hand off to them would be, what would your advice be there?
So for me, I would say, you know, have them start with data entry. But also too, it depends on like how you're set up. So, you know, if you're still using a cell phone for your office line, well, you know, your admin's not ever, even if you had an in-person admin, they can't answer your cell phone. You know, it's like, unless you need it.
Yes. That's
so,
100%
you know,
correct.
I would, you know, honestly, I would say the first thing you should do is get a VoIP, you know, a VoIP phone line, you know, and there's a bunch of companies that do it. You know, you can use Go High Level, you know, so, you know, if anyone doesn't have the 7-figure, and if you do hire a VA, they get free 7-figure, right? Is that still part of
That's right. Yeah. 7-figure CRM included with
VA, you'll get the Go High Level account to be able to have
there you go
integrated.
That's right.
But having a VoIP phone to where just your admin could answer a phone call is a big thing. So then it's like, now they can help answer phone calls. And one of the tips I got from Lisa, she was like, look, she's like, I did video calls with my VAs. And she goes, I just left them on the screen, and then they listened to how I spoke to my clients so they could get a better feel for how I interact with them, how I talk to them, how I schedule them. And then they can kind of pick up on tips. So then you're able to quickly bring them up to kind of like how you want them to handle their phone calls. But, you know, dealing with phone calls and data entry, I think for me personally, I think is the two biggest things that, you know, somebody could get help with that take up a ton of your time, you know. And when you talk to agents, they're like, I'm running drug plans till midnight. Well, you know, it's like, well, if you have someone who gets all that data and types everything in, well, now you got to do is open up your quoting software. You know, I'm a huge Connecture fan. So it's like, for me, it's just hitting Connecture and then going into what I'm looking for. It's either drug plans or Medicare Advantage plans. And it's kind of like, you know, which ones are going to be good in different areas, but it's just hitting your computer buttons, looking at drug costs, and then seeing what copays and benefits and stuff look like. But if they can do 80-90% of the work and you just have to do a quick review, you know, just, you know, look over the meds real quick and look at the plans. Well, now instead of spending 20 minutes, you know, doing something, you can spend 2 or 3 minutes. So you're able to maximize your time. You're not staying up till midnight running drug plans. You know, it's like you can really get a lot of your time back. And then too, if you're not doing that data entry, well, now you can take appointments, you know, until whatever time you want to stop. You know, it's like, I had people at my office last year and it was, you know, 6:30 and they're like, am I the last one? And I said, I wish you were. You know, it's like, I still got 2 or 3 people left, and they would kind of look at me and they're like, really? But it is one of those things. It's like, but I was able to do that because I'm not trying to call people back. You know, before I would feel guilty about calling people back, you know, at 8:00 at night, you know, trying to get them scheduled for later in the week or the next week. But now I don't, you know, like, I'm not calling people back at 8:00 because they've already been, the call's already been answered. It's already been answered.
Yep.
They've already been put on the calendar. They've already been scheduled. They're getting reminders. So I mean, it is one of those things where I would say data entry, getting a good system. Some CRMs, you can send out a sheet, to where they can fill in their data. For me, it's just, like I said, it's like, I'm not the most technical, but I have a lot of technology that I use. But, when Dalton came out with the Retire Flow, I was like,
absolutely.
Look, it's like it's CMS approved, it's compliant, it's got the security, it's like, and it's
integrates.
It's a one-click link. It's like not typing in a 10-digit passcode that only works on a Windows computer. I mean, it's super easy, simple, collect the data, and it's backed up. And coming from someone who switched FMOs and lost all the data that was stored in Connexure, having to get all that again, having a hard backup on a PDF in the system on Retire Flow. And then now when we enter it, so my VA, she takes it, she enters doctors, medicines into the CRM. So it's saved there. It's in the quoting software. So it's in that. And then we have the hard backup. And then that, is saved in a digital backup and on the CRM as well. So it's kind of like, even if we make a mistake and delete a bunch of meds, it's like we still have the PDF backup on their file. So, it's kind of like now we have redundancy that we didn't have before. But,
we're talking about like these bigger books and people having to deal with customer service. Your phone a lot of times is ringing off, especially during AEP, right? I mean, they're getting told essentially by the media that they need to call in, right? They're getting inundated with marketing from everybody. Billions of dollars in marketing is going out. They're seeing TV commercials. I know every time I go to the gym during AEP, I'm seeing a Medicare commercial. So it's like, it's everywhere all the time. So having the ability to not be on the phone every time it rings, right? And not blowing up your day. I mean, that's such a big part of it and this is something I went through as somebody hiring virtual assistants, figuring out what can they do? How can they help me? Being able to structure my day and say, here's what I need to get done today. Here's the appointments I already have scheduled. And if the phone rings, they can answer that phone and potentially help them right there and then if it's something simple, or schedule it. Maybe they can fit it in your schedule that day, or maybe they're for the next day, etc. But just getting your day back in that sense was such a big one for me. So yeah, I think VoIP is a huge one. You can port your number, you guys. If you are just using a cell phone, you can port it to something like 7-Figure CRM, which is our Go High Level white label, or any other VoIP service, Ring Central. You can keep that number. If you've given that number out to hundreds, thousands of your clients, you can port that number. They can still call you at that number. But now other people can help you with those calls. Yeah. Because again, that was probably my number one as an agent, was just the amount of time I was stuck on the phone every week. And being able to hand that off. I mean, crazy.
Yeah. If you get, and it's one of those things, like there was one, it was not last year, I think it was the year before, it was like 100 phone calls in like 2 days. And literally I spent hours just trying to get the calls off the voicemail. Like, I was like who actually like getting the name, like, who actually called in and just getting it all organized. So then I could check off like once they got scheduled or what we emailed about. But, another tip that I haven't done in the past that we'll probably do more of going forward was, sending out confirmation messages for plans that aren't changing. So if there's a plan that's going to stay stable, that isn't having a shakeup, the drugs are still looking good, sending out, emails, text, letters, if you want, to people saying, hey, your plan is, staying stable. There's not any major changes. You're good for the next year. So it's kind of like, so now you've alleviated a bunch of those call-ins. So you don't have to have an appointment with those clients because you've essentially done it already. So if they have a concern, they can reach out. But, if you've got a big book of, so say you've got a, your Humana or Aetna or UHC business, one of those plans is staying great. Well, you notify everybody. So now that's one big chunk of your business that you don't have to try to get through. They've been told. And if they have a concern, they can still call in. But if you can save
Yeah.
yourself from dealing with hundreds or thousands of people, like, that's a great way to get some of your time back that I haven't done in the past. But by talking to other agents, they were like, we do this. And I'm like, I should do that too, but it's just
Yeah.
sometimes like the most simplest things you're like,
Yeah.
why haven't I done that? Instead of saying,
Yeah.
it's like, call in or get, it's like, I think we're in the early stages, you're so programmed to like want to call everyone, call everyone or try to deal with everyone, that as you grow, like it's hard to get into your head that not everybody needs to be talked.
Yes.
It's like if nothing's changing, because I normally tell people, like, if they have a med sup, like, look, unless you had a major change in your drugs, you're good. We don't need to meet during AEP. If you have a big concern, we can, but now it's kind of like, you can actually check and then, just have someone call them back and be like, okay, you wanted us to look, we checked everything, you're fine. So it becomes a 5-minute call instead of a 20-minute appointment. So.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, like, as we talk about it right now, and again, that's the same, same kind of process we utilize at ESI, is if we know they're on the best plan for them, we're going to try to tell them that without talking to them, right? Because we're trying to cut down on that time. And like, it seems like such a no-brainer as we're talking, like, why would anyone get on the phone and spend 30 minutes talking to someone when they don't even need to change anything? But when you are brand new, I think it's something about like that activity level, like, especially if you're really trying to succeed, right? That early on, that you're just trying to get your activity level up. You're just so used to trying to talk to as many people all the time. You're talking to all your clients. Maybe the first couple AEPs, you are talking to every single client, on the phone, because maybe your book's not that big. But it does get to a point as you've grown where it's like, hey, you're on the best plan. Like, only call if something serious is going on. Thanks,
And, and I mean, you're always going to have stuff. And I mean, last year, one of the funniest ones I had that happened repeatedly was somebody calls, I pull up their drugs. I'm like, has anything changed? No. Perfect. You've got the same drug plan. Everything's cool. You're going to be spending, $500 next year on meds. And they're like, really? I thought that Ozempic would have made it a lot more expensive. And I'm like, buddy, that's not on the list. I was like, that's not. I was like, that makes a difference. So we did run across some of that, but that is one of the reasons too why I do like the retire flow, because now you're protected. If they do try to file a complaint in January, and it's like, well, here's the list that you sent to me that doesn't have the most expensive medicine you take on it. So it's like, now I can show, if you were to file a complaint that says like, well, we ran it based off of these meds. These are the ones we got the form at this date and time. We had, you've got all your documentation, and it's a CMS approved form. So, it's like, it can't be like, well, your collection method was bad. And it's like, no, my collection method's approved by Medicare. So, I like it having, as you grow and get bigger and bigger, you care more and more about compliance and making sure that there's no gray area, that everything is 100%. And that's, just getting stuff over the phone. It's like, well, we all have been there where clients, forget stuff. They've got the most expensive inhaler they take is in their purse and not in the medicine cabinet. So, it's stuff like that where there's always stuff that pops up, but having that documentation to be like, well, no, you never gave me that, so I couldn't have told you about it. So I'll ask you another question here about your virtual assistant, and then we'll kind of get into final thoughts. We're getting towards the top of the hour here. So, we talked a little bit about training. I think everyone that I've talked to that's seen a lot of success with their virtual assistant, they've spent time on training. I think this is one of those inevitable things. Anytime you hire anyone for your company in any industry, right? Like, this is just part of the beast. I understand it's not the most fun thing to do, to sit there with someone and, walk them through things. And then, some agents, I think, get caught up in this idea too of like, I could have done this 3 times over in the time I'm taking to train this person to do it. And they're almost just a lack of patience, I guess, is kind of what it is. Right. So, that's a big failure point, I think, for a lot of agents, is just not being patient with taking the time to really train someone. So
on that training piece, how much time do you feel like it took you before your virtual assistant was really picking up the core? And obviously we're always adding things, right? Like I'm sure you are, just like I'm always adding things to some of my assistants where I'm like, hey, I need you to do this. So it's not that the training necessarily stops, but like to get through that initial core training piece, how long did that take you, or maybe how much time would you say that took you?
So, I mean, I ramped up. So it was one of those things, like I only had so much free time. So we started out at 20 hours a week for, I think, like a month. And then and slowly built on stuff, but it was kind of focusing on a couple core tasks. And then as we did more and more, then I ramped up to 30 to 40 hours. But it was, I used to work in restaurants. I trained people. Some people go quick, some don't, but it is one of the biggest things that, talking to you, talking to Lisa, was even if someone's in front of you, with any job you ever do, you have to train them. It's like, I think people jump into it thinking that, they're just going to know how to do everything. Well, you learned how to do everything when you started. Well, you have to teach them. And it's like, well, you didn't learn on the first day. You had to do it over and over again. And knowing that, the only difference between doing it in person and doing it with a virtual assistant is that you're on video. It's like, I like video. I hate talking to myself, on the phone, like trying to teach, I like being able to see if people are understanding what's going on. So, I did video with her. And one of the big things was just, we kind of went over it. And then after we went over it a few times, I'm like, all right, now you do it. And then I could watch her go through the steps and do it. And then, one of the things too is like, it's building out your SOPs. So you can record videos. I used a program called Scribe. And after she was trained to do it, I was like, hey, why don't you, make a scribe that shows how we do that? So I actually had her make the training videos.
Nice.
Make the training. I was like, we delegated that out.
That's a great,
I was like, show how to take the retire flow form and then enter it into Connecture. So whenever we do bring on, other agents, they can call her and ask questions. They can look at the documents we have, but then it's going to save time later on, and that was one of the big things that I kind of had in the back of my head was, okay, you're going to spend time, training, and some stuff took a day or two, some stuff took a couple weeks, but other stuff like the drugs, we understand the intricacies of how to enter medicines because we've done it thousands of times. But, for someone who hasn't, they're learning, every single time they do it. Well, if there was ever a mistake, I would just send her a message and be like, hey, on GABA, I think it's like gabapentin has a once daily that you should never, I don't know when you would ever pick that, but it's some stupid cost. Kind of like the one that you see every year as soon as open enrollment hits. Guys, why is levothyroxine so expensive? It's normally because you have the capsules, not the tablets. But we know that. But alphabetically, the stupid capsules show up. It's like artificially put at the bottom of the list. So she made a list of all those fluky deals. The strange things that you incur, or the stuff that we need to know. So some of those things that the clients messed up on their intake, or that whenever you type it into the CRM, it's not the one that pops up in the first bit. You've got to scroll down to get to the right answer. So she made notes on all that. So now we're building out, essentially, your help document for anybody else. Well, that's going to save your LOA agent or your next virtual assistant. It's going to speed up that training time. So you might invest 20 hours with somebody, but then the next person you train is only going to be 10, and the next person after that's only going to take you 5. And it's kind of like building out SOPs, building out video libraries, and it's like I don't have a huge video library built out, but there is the 7-Figure University where Christian built out a ton of those videos, and you can have agents watch that. To supplement until you build out your own for your own agency. But just having
investment.
And one of the things too, people are like, well, what about software? And one of the things I did like was that they do a several week training thing, when they transition to becoming VAs. So she had a very general knowledge of Go High Level, the 7-Figure Go High Level. They put them through a training. They put them through a training for Agency Block, for Microsoft. Like my girl could do stuff on Microsoft Excel that I didn't even know how to do. And I was like, I wish there was a way to compare these two lines. I had like multiple data for the same people. I was like, I wish there was a way to compare the differences. And she was like this, and then like everything that was, was red. And I was like, exactly that. And I was like, so it's, so there are some things. So then it's like they have a baseline, but also too, like most software has like info videos, so
Great point.
During her downtime, like as I'm trying to come up with tasks and come up with stuff to have her do, while we were ramping up those hours, I was like, here's the thing, what you're going to do, like in between, like as soon as you finish your task for the day, you're going to watch the welcome videos on how all the software works. So I was like, start at the top and work your way down. And then, I started using Comtrack last year. And it was one of those things. I'm like, look, I was like, we're both learning on this one. I was like, I had her watch all the videos. I was like, you watch all these videos in your downtime. I'll be watching them. And then between the two of us, we'll be able to get the software figured out.
Nice.
But it's, it just, anything's going to take time, but you have to have patience and know that, growing is a long-term strategy. I mean, it's, if you spend the time today to build out your systems, build out your procedures, and get training, get your good help, get people up to speed, then the next person you bring on will be even quicker. We used to use, it's a super old book, but it was like the 1 Minute Manager, where it talks about like the different levels. Well, if you take your new person and match them up with the person at the top of the chain, they're going to quickly, they're going to get there quick, but having those materials and having the training and getting that stuff set up, like, well, now when you bring on a new agent or you bring on a new admin, like they can quickly learn and get there. So it's, but if you have to invest that time to do it in the beginning, but it's, I think, years to get there. It's like most people aren't hiring a VA their first year. But it's like, look, if you've got 2 or 3 years in the business and you're hiring someone, like you're trying to get 3 years of your knowledge into their head, like it's going to take a little bit. But don't, if you don't have time to work with them, like, I don't know if Glenn wants it, but I was like, like don't hire them for 40 hours. Like don't bring them on for 40 hours the first week, knowing that you only have 15 hours to spend with them.
Right.
But it's like,
that's important.
Realistically, like, okay, I've got 10, 20 hours I can work with this person this week, and I can have them watch videos for 5 hours. So bring them on for 25 hours. And then as they grow, like you can ramp it up. You just send an email and say, hey, it's like, Nikki, it's like, hey, Nikki, it's like, I'm going to bump her to 30 hours next week. It's like, she'll be at 40 out. Like, but then you're not just burning through your hours that you've purchased. You're doing things wisely. But also too, like with my admin, she was like, well, I want to learn. She was like, I don't want to just sit, like, she kind of felt bad on some of the stuff because I didn't have something for her to do. And she was like, I'm staring at a computer screen for 2 hours today. I didn't do anything. She was like, what can I do? Is there something I can do? And it's like, then that night I would try to get some tasks lined up and get them sent over. But, just
having some background tasks is super important. One of the gold pieces that Chris just shared there, though, you guys, that I think is so important that everyone knows if you are thinking about a virtual assistant or you're just trying to train anyone, is you don't necessarily have to come up with all the training yourself. There is third-party training, especially for a lot of these major software programs, that can be really great training that's on YouTube or on their website, or they've created a knowledge database. That is a gold tip. So I appreciate you saying that, Chris.
Do VAs get 7-Figure University if like hire heroes?
They do.
Yeah. So, I mean, so half of the issues we talked about today, like your phone system, your automations, your communication, your video library,
all in there.
Like, it's part of, if you do hire a VA, it is part of that. You get all that. I'd bought it all separate, and now it's all in that. But it's I got my plaque for the lifetime member.
Yeah, that's right.
But but it's there's so many resources available, but just knowing to bring them on and integrate them.
Yeah.
But just knowing that it's going to take time, and not everyone's a perfect fit, but that is one of those things, like, it does kind of make you think. I got an email when I started and it was like, what specific tasks do you want this person to accomplish for you? So I had to write out a list, and it was like, well, this is the software I use. This is the things I want to begin with. Well, whenever they're trying to find the VA, they're finding someone who has strengths in those areas first. So they're trying to find someone that they're like, okay, well, here's the person that can do these things, but if you want someone who's a social media, if you want a VA that's going to replace, a $2,000 a month marketing agency, it's like, well, you're going to have to teach them how to get to that point, but if you want them to do stuff on Canva, like I send random photos to my VA and say, make this in Canva.
I love it.
And she does, I have a gold account, and every now and again, she might ask a question, but for the most part, like I'll get a text message. How does this look? Hey, change this or that. Hey, and then, an hour later I'll get something. It's like, all right, how's this look? And then eventually it's like, all right, that looks great. Perfect. But I've done a lot of that, just I come across something, I've seen something on a carrier website and it's like, I need to get this not carrier branded. I want this generic, and I'll send it to her and I'll be like, hey, make this in Canva, and she'll do it, but it's kind of, having some kind of foundation or whatever, but for them to build off of, I think is great too.
I think that's another great tip is, again, just having, because the mindset, I think a lot of times is an agent's looking at it like, I need to train this person and this is like a one-time thing. But I think if you come at it from the angle of, I'm building a foundation where if I lose this person, or if I want to hire more people, they get to come through and now they're building on what I've already invested time and energy into for this training. I think that's a really great tip. So we're at the top of the hour here, Chris. I really, really appreciate your time. I want to respect your time as well. Final thoughts on today's episode. Chris shared so many gold nuggets here. I think there was a question here too earlier in the chat about the app for iPad. Maybe you could mention that again.
It was Luma Booth. It's Luma and then like BOOTH, like
Luma Booth. So several gold nuggets.
That's the one I
shared. Shared here by Chris today. Chris, final thoughts on today's episode, and then we'll wrap up here.
I would say, if you're looking to grow, find ways that you can add on to your agency. Having a VA, hiring an LOA, and doing it the right way. It's like, make sure if you're hiring an LOA, they know what they're signing up for. They know they're not going to own the business. But look for ways to grow your agency that's not you doing everything. It's like, I just got back from our agent appreciation event that my FMO does, but I had a VA that was working, answering all the calls, scheduling appointments. It's like, we've got, two girls, one of them's fully trained, one of them's still learning, but, being able to, if somebody absolutely had to have an appointment on the 2 days I was gone, it looks like you're going to meet with Megan, but it's but a business that can work if you're not there, like that's a true business. If everything shuts down because if you're with your family or you're out of town, it's like, that's a job, start looking at it as a way that your business can carry on if you're not there. I would say, and it takes time, you've got to get some foundation, you got to get some renewals built up, but hiring a VA, I'm sucker for a discount. I buy my hours by the quarter, but buy a bigger package, get it for a cheaper per hour, but then you don't have to work them 40 hours unless you need it. But it's kind of find ways to save money, find ways to incorporate help at a cheaper cost as you grow. And it's like, hiring, someone that can answer your phone and help with some of that data entry, I think is kind of the easiest way to offset that. Hiring a second agent right out of the gate is going to be a lot more expensive because you got to get lead flow and marketing and stuff for them. But, if they can free you up to make more money, now you're making more money. Now you can bring on that other agent, just trying to find ways to do stuff economically.
I love it. I think, again, whether there's two different trajectories I think a lot of agents are on. And I think one trajectory is like, how can I grow my business and make it a lot bigger? And maybe I want to be an agency owner. And then there's the other trajectory of, I want this to be more of a passive business. I want to spend more time with my friends and family. And I just don't want to have to be the one answering the phone every time. regardless of like what your trajectory looks like, I think bringing in another agent or bringing in virtual assistants can really help. Whether that's, again, you're trying to get more personal time or you're trying to grow and you can't do everything yourself. So, and I think Chris has done a great job kind of giving you real examples today on this episode. So again, I really appreciate your time, Chris. If you are made it to the end of the episode, you're the MVP today. So I appreciate you guys listening, watching. If you're watching the replay on YouTube of this episode, hit the subscribe button. We'd love to make sure you don't miss any future episodes when they get dropped. Give us a comment. It is Freebie Friday. Tomorrow, we're going to be giving away leads. So if you're looking for some free leads, all you have to do to enter into the giveaway is comment on either today's episode in the Seven Figure Medicare Agent Facebook group. There's 4 streams this week. We did 4 episodes. So all you have to do is comment on one of the streams. If you comment on every single stream, that gets you up to 4 entries into the giveaway tomorrow. So drop a comment. Tell us what you're thinking. Ask us a question. And yes, that's it. So until next time, you guys, happy selling. Chris, again, thank you so much.
All right, thanks for having me, Glenn.
All right, see you guys.
See you.